So definitely want to welcome everyone here. I know everybody's probably neck deep in meetings galore and has got all kinds of stuff going on. So definitely appreciate you taking some time out of your days and helping us out here. And did kind of ran through a safety moment there and much appreciated to kind of piggyback on that with the tree work and stuff. We are in storms here still. Um, and just be mindful of any limbs and things that might be on those overhead power lines and stuff. Just leave them be. um, don't try to knock that limb off. Treat every line as a live power line. So with that and our safety, just want to make sure everyone is in a safe spot here to take the call here. I know we've got some folks driving and coming in and doing some different things. So if you are driving, we just ask that you remain hands free at minimum. If you're able to find a designated parking area off the main road there. And for those that are kind of in an office environment, either their work location or home office or remote office, whatever kind of office it may be, your office in the field, what have you. Just take a moment, check your surroundings for your immediate area while you're participating here, and address any hazards that might be in your path. So we'll give everybody just a moment to address their areas and make any changes they need to before we get going. Oh, and there was one tip that I heard the other day. I hadn't really given it much thought, but with my water bottle reminded me, if you are having a drink at your little workstation, if you don't have a lid on it, best to kind of keep that beverage at a lower level than your electronic equipment. In case it does spill, it won't spill on your electronics equipment. Be a bad day.
Sounds like something from experience, Roger.
I think it was from somebody else that I heard it from, but so far I have not had that. But I've done it, and I never really paid it much attention until they said something about it. So, yeah, you've got a good point there. So
I thought that's
watch
how
out.
you got a new computer, was spilling your drink out.
Yeah, that could be
Or
the
the
trick.
afternoon off.
Yeah.
That could be the trick.
Mm.
So there's these great little brushes that Dominion are giving away. Um, Mark, there you go. I'm sporting your little brush, so if something gets on your electronics, you can brush it off.
It won't do much for a cup of water, though.
I know, but it'll help clean off your food crumbs from all of us that work from home. Oh.
Yeah, a fancy little brush there that Dominion has. No, Lewis usually does a COVID update too, but I don't know if anybody has anything to add for COVID. I know, we're kind of in the same pattern that we've been, just trying to align with CDC, guidance and recommendations and things like that, taking precautions, all that good stuff. Um, of course, there are folks, still in the office and in the workforce. Nothing's really changed with that since day one, but um, they're doing different things with the hybrid environments and things of that nature. But does anybody have anything they don't know to share, any updates for doing anything different with the COVID and stuff? Ready for it to go away, but I don't think it is.
Hey, Dan, I'll just mention just in our travels to some of our UCC meetings and, also on personal notes too, as you said, it's still there. People are getting it. I know my son had contracted it a couple weeks ago and, thankful it's very minimal. It's more like a head cold, that sort of thing. But, just keep using that hand sanitizer. We do have some, so if we need to drop some off to some of your crews, we are more than happy to.
All right. Oh, there's Lewis. Lewis go.
Greetings,
There.
folks. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay, good deal. I missed your COVID update, Dan. I heard you started and I switched from the phone over here.
Oh, it was glorious. So you missed out.
Yeah. I can just tell you that we've got people that are still getting sick around here. Really, it's hard to tell. It's even COVID in some cases. They seem to automatically assume there's a lot of the flu going around. Definitely encourage people to get that flu shot. It is available. I know some people want to wait a little bit longer. I guess they figure October is kind of closer to the beginning of the worst of the flu season in the winter or something. But it's available now. I recommend people go ahead and get it. Other than that, really just continue to take the precautions, get that COVID, the new Omicron booster, I guess, is rolling out now to pharmacies, and we're encouraging folks to do that as well. And that's the COVID update.
I thought COVID was over.
I know, I thought so too, actually. If you're living your best life, you could pretend that, but at the same time, who knows?
Yeah, no, I'm just joking. My wife and I are just now getting over it.
Oh,
For about 2
really?
weeks.
Oof.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
you've
and it
done
was
everything,
much more
Jody,
than-
everything you could possibly do to keep her safe from that.
Yeah, I know. I just think she got it from her work environment, but it was more than a cold for both of us, and we have had our shots. But we're trying to get our feet back under us now.
Good deal. That's all I have for COVID. Sorry. So, did you want to talk about this, Ian? This damage reporting on the monthly basis, or we started doing
Sure.
it. You can jump in and start talking about it. I'll chime in if there's
Yeah.
anything that I want to add
Okay.
into it.
So a couple months ago, Lewis asked that we go ahead and add this to each month's UCC presentation.
And you've got
And I think,
Yeah, I'm hearing an echo.
yeah, Lewis, it might be you.
Yeah, it might be yours, Lewis. Okay. Is that better?
yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. So I think most of all of you guys have seen this at our local UCC. What we're doing is we're taking all of the damage reports that come into the center and place those into a spreadsheet so that you can see how many damages are reported each month in your county. And then over a course of time, then we can kind of compare some of that information, by the county. And really, as we're beginning to dig into a lot of this data, Lewis is really kind of drilling down into, by the county so that we can kind of see, more of a good reflection of what's going on a local basis. It's no surprise that, the majority of the damages are still coming from Mecklenburg and from Wake. And certainly as where the majority of the work's coming from, that's typically where we're going to see, the highest damages. So we encourage, once again, please report those. That's the only way that we know how to, deal with a lot of education or marketing, any aspect of that. But as we kind of drill down into more of the reports today, some of this will kind of all come full circle. Not only the damages may be higher in these counties, but we're also seeing the updates higher in these counties. So there's a lot of correlation to a lot of this data.
And
Lewis,
just to
was there
dovetail,
anything
yeah,
else you wanted?
yeah. Can you hear me now? Is it better? No echoes? Okay, I figured I
Yes.
switched.
Perfect.
Okay. One of the things that we're doing as well is a deep dive into the 2021 data. I've been working with Ahmed for several years now in terms of researching to sort of dig in to find out root causes or direct and indirect causes, however you want to look at it. One of the things that we're picking apart right now is natural gas reported damages tend to be the most high quality. They tend to have the most information in there that's filled out. And so the fields are there. That makes a big difference, especially if you're trying to trend and you're trying to take each damage incident that has the most value and be able to compare. So with natural gas damages that we had for the last week, we have about 400 or so that have pretty high quality, and we're going to be trending that for the last couple of years and primarily looking at trending of root causes. The DIRT study, the DIRT report is about to come out probably in the next 2 weeks. It's being compiled now, but some of the findings on that are not anything that are a big surprise. I mean, horizontal directional drilling is a technology that's definitely one that's creating some damages, right? It feels like the technology is almost surpassing the ability for the locates to keep up in some ways, and that's not an excuse for the locators. But if you think about it, if they can throw down 15,000 feet a day in one area, and then they're calling in both sides of the street, that's effectively 30,000 feet that requires multiple locators all dedicated to that one thing. And that's not the only project. So anyway, we're trying to look into, I guess, trending some of these root causes by the type of work, by the type of equipment that's being used, and then also we can isolate that down to these counties like we're doing here too, and you can almost follow and track and trace and see how that's being affected by some of this work that's taking place. It's not like we don't know that that's what it is, but that's definitely something that we need to get our hands around. Bob's asking if that damage report that you just showed there was from August. I think that was August's information. Is that correct, Ann?
Yeah. Yes, that is August. Sorry,
By
I
the
didn't see
counties.
your message there, Bob. Yes, it is August.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's the bigger
I'll
challenge.
pull
One of
that
the
back
bigger
up for you.
challenges is as we look at the root causes of these damages nationally, even, there's three buckets, three major groups that they attribute the damages to. One of them is no call damages, no notification made. Another one is excavation practices, and then the third is locate practices. On the no notification made percentages, we're really asking that they go deeper into that, because I'm not sure how that's being reported. There's certainly circumstances of excavators starting before the ticket is valid and working past the validity date. That doesn't necessarily mean that no notification was made. So we're really trying to make sure that we get clear continuity between how people are reporting into the DIRT system. But on that issue of damages by no call, it's very curious. Some of the data that I've seen has been shared with me from the gas companies, and I'm sending letters out to these companies reminding them of the law, etc. Some of them are the city of Greensboro, a couple of towns, and there may be 3 instances where there were damages where they did not call. But we know that in general, they're obviously calling for work that they do. So why is it in some cases they're calling, in some cases they aren't? To me, that's a real serious question to understand what drives that. And then we can hopefully get around in front of that with some education. But we need to understand more about these damages that are occurring with no notification made from companies that normally do put in requests. Is it because they don't trust the process? Are there just a few instances of this happening because maybe they decided it was an emergency, but then they damaged and that's the way it was reported? I don't know. I've got to go back to the gas companies, especially with these municipalities on these specific damages, and ask them if there was a follow-up ticket created after the damage. Maybe it was that it was an emergency and they just didn't create the ticket beforehand, which by law they're able to do. They're able to effect a repair and then, as soon as practicable, create a ticket. I want to make sure there was literally no ticket at all associated with any damage that's coming from a municipality, especially a large municipality like Greensboro. So that's my soapbox on the damages piece of it. I think everyone here is going to be interested in the dirt report. We have a vastly different number of damages that were reported into the system last year because the biggest contributor of damages to the system did not participate. So consequently, the numbers of actual incidents reported went down considerably, like really considerably. Like if you look at just the numbers, it's going to look like 50% of, we've reduced damages by 50% in the state. Folks, that's not the case. Obviously, we're looking at the damages that were reported, the incidents that were duplicated or multiple reports condensed into one. And because of that hole in the dirt report, we've taken the time to go back and retrend the last 3 years and pull out that contributor of the data to see if it made a big switch or a big move in terms of root cause, especially in those 3 classes that we talked about: no notification, excavation, location. They're still the top 3. So there was a minor shift when you take that group out and use comparable data. There is still the major 3, but it's a few minor shifts. And what that tells us is these are still going to be the large classes of contributors to damages, regardless of who's putting the data in. And so now our focus is really on quality. And we really want to focus in on those people who are putting in high quality reports. Because as I said earlier, it's very difficult if you've got really poor quality or not reported the root cause or the type of work being done or the equipment. If those things are left blank, then it's hard to trend it over a period of time. So again, that's why we're going to be focusing on quality. We're going to be focusing on the comparable data from those 3 years and looking at trying to trend what we can see from that. The other major contributor in terms of work type is water, right? Prior to a lot of the fiber work being done, water was always at the top. And since then, they've kind of gone back and forth between water. And there were people curious about this at the CGA. And I said, well, there's really nothing to be super curious about. They're going very deep. These projects take time. They're going pretty wide, and they're going in areas where there's a lot of facilities. So it's not a big surprise. But again, it's maybe a different approach in education to address some of those issues and look at those types of entities. I know that when we get into these updates and some of these other things, you're going to hear some positive reports of what these interventions with these companies can do in terms of making them aware of their contributions. Bob and Segra did a fantastic job internally with theirs. They did make a dent in it a couple years back when we were focused on this, but they were just one drop of water in the rain barrel. And as a period of time went by, even their results, it's like it's a continual effort we're going to have to do on these updates, folks. We're over 30% now, I think. And that's across the state with Bob will tell you, and Dan will too, and probably Dino and anybody on here that that's you'll see it in the report as we look at percentages by county. There are plenty where they're up at the 50%, 40 to 50% mark. And we just need to understand why that is and what we can do about it. I'll step off my soapbox and listen to some folks comment just for a hot second. Anybody have anything they want to add to that conversation?
I'm glad we're not at 50%, Lois.
Yeah. Well, when we started this exercise, well, it wasn't even this exercise. When I started here 10, 11 years ago, we were running around 20%, right, Mark? I mean, we were concerned at 20%. We thought, well, 20% seems kind of high. And even Doc, who was, he was like, that seems real high, shouldn't be but 8% or something. So we went around the horn and started checking with other states, and 20% was about normal. It was consistent around different states. They saw around 20%. So we felt like, okay, well, at least that we can work down it, but it's gone up to the point now where it's at 30%. And, that's a real troubling concern, I think, in terms of noise, and it ain't going to get better by itself. And as everybody can see what's coming around the bend next year, and that, it's only going to get more intense. This is a good report that she just pulled up. So what we did here, going all the way back to September, is we pulled the percentages of update tickets, and we did it from September of last year through August of this year. What I did was, and some of these fields are hidden in the report. You can open them up and see the actual numbers. Like on the far end, you can see for August, I'm showing you the number of updates versus the number of tickets. And there's two columns for each of these months to go back there. That's how we calculate these percentages. And then all I did here was to reorder and shift everything based on the most previous month. So that was August, top down. And then you see a 66% in Surrey. Now it's not a lot of tickets, but that's a lot of updates. But as like she was pointing, you could see she had her cursor down there at Mecklenburg. And you can look at Guilford too and see, it's surpassing 30. That's 37% basically, 36 and a half. I mean, and if you track it looking backwards, you say, well, are we making progress? It's sort of, in the case of Mecklenburg, it's incrementally started going up. It hit its peak in July. I mean, that was the peak for Mecklenburg's 37.6%. The other interesting thing is, I think Mark pointed out there was more damages in August. August tends to be a month with more damages, more frequency of damages happening than the other months. That's something that CGA has shown through the DIRT process as well. They've taken all the incidents reported and they've looked at it in periods of months and time. And for some reason, August is always a peak month for damages. But, again, the purpose of this report is to look at these counties that are high and start to trend, look across, going backwards. Are we getting better? Is it getting worse? Folks, it's not getting better in a lot of places here. I can tell you that. And is this a result of particular types of work moving through at a quick pace in some months? It's hard to say. The next step on this analysis would be to take one of these counties, break down the work types just by that one county on the updates, and then sort them by month and see if there's a particular work type that's contributing more heavily than others to this. Again, would love to hear people's comments about this particular report.
By work type would be very interesting. By company, of course, would be very interesting. I will say what August did to us was because of the numbers, and the updates drove part of this. We had more operator at fault damages than we did fail to call. We had at least 10% more. We had 20% more operator at fault than we did failure to call.
And is that because you're doing maintenance or actually installing and cutting your own? I mean, how does that work? What is the prime?
An operator at fault, that means most likely we didn't get there, or we were rushed and didn't mark correctly. And
I see, I got you.
That was a result of having the same number of people with locators in their hands and too many locates. I hate to put it that way, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dino, I'm glad you're here because he expressed this pretty clearly. I want to say it couldn't have been last year. It was probably 2 years ago. in the summer. I'm losing track of time, but Dino, it hit a wall where you were pointing out that it was sort of unsustainable. And this is where I'm saying too that the technology has surpassed the ability for people, the technology to install and put in facilities has surpassed the ability to successfully locate so many feet in a day. It's exceeding the amount. The technology for locating hasn't really changed to the point that it's making it go that much faster. It's still everything else they have to do is pretty much the same. They're working with, in some cases, a workforce that's smaller. They're trying to train people in, but then you've got a big chunk of people who are less experienced, who may take more time. And then you've got situations again where one particular instance, one job, if the excavators were working directly with the locators, they would call in both sides of the road, but they would clearly communicate that this is what our path is. Here's our project. We're going to be on the east side for 5 miles, and then we're going to cut over and do the other side. So yes, we're calling both sides in, but you really only need to locate where we're going, because otherwise it's double the effort. And in some cases they're doing these locates and they don't even end up there at all. And that's frustrating. It's also wasteful and time consuming. And then it starts to break down the trust level between the boots on the ground locators and the excavators. And in this one particular instance, I saw the frustration level got to the point where the excavators just kind of crossed their arms and said, well, the hell with you then. We're not going to even give you the prints. And you just locate what we tell you, because that's the law. And see, when it gets to that level, it's really difficult to see any light. And everything's got to be toned down, dialed back. The heat has to come down. Rational conversation has to happen with people higher up. And we were able to do that in one circumstance, but that's just one circumstance. I mean, I can't tell you how many of those are going on in the state, because I'm not privy to every single one of these boots on the ground conversations. But I can tell you that communication has to be happening. Coordination has to be happening on the ground, especially in light of this fact of the technology. Like I said, the ability to lay this stuff down that fast is just, it's crippling the ability to stay on top of it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. It's pretty much a perfect storm, and to Lewis's point, I brought this up. We're at a point where I equate this to about 10 years ago, when the FAA was still running on freaking vacuum tubes for our air traffic control system, which was a pretty scary thing. And they finally modernized it. In most cases, folks, I can tell you that in Florida, our law was written in 1995. We are eons beyond what was capable in 1995, or what the volumes were in 1995. So we have a situation where and my company is guilty of this as well. We have a fiber build, and we were all pent up for the pandemic and supply chain and everything else. And all of a sudden, 4 million feet of fiber came in Tuesday. And guess what? Somebody in Dallas wants it in the ground on Friday. It doesn't work that way, okay? So what we have is just exactly what Lewis says. They call in right away, and maybe they work with you and go, well, yeah, just do these 1,000 feet on the right side of the road, but they're doing a CYA. And then you have certain individuals, certain excavators say, I don't care, you got 3 days to do it, 2 days to do it, and just, do it, and then hang up on you. It's definitely gotten to critical mass, because there's no wiggle room anymore. We're way beyond capacity, and I'm not even getting into the fact that at some point I believe that there's going to have to be some skin in the game by the excavators, because their ability to just call in thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets and just hang up the phone and you say you got 2 days and hang up on you, that's got to stop. Okay, we all have to work together. And to Lewis's excellent point, they can bring in 40 drills. These drills are better than they were in 1995. They can do a mile a day per drill, maybe, or 5,000, 4,000 feet per day per drill. They didn't do that stuff in the 90s and 2000s. So we don't have the resources, the infinite resources to do this. And this is speaking from an excavator and a member operator perspective. We just don't have that. We have to find a way to get this to work and to put some kind of reasonable limits on it. It's going to fall off the cliff before somebody says, "Oh, okay, we have to do something about it." And to your point, Louis, I'm hoping that it doesn't take a catastrophic event like a fatality for somebody to say, "Hey, we have a problem here." We've been saying we have a problem for quite some time. And we're all trying to work together with the excavators. In my state, we have, a solid 30% of all the tickets are renewals, and they've been renewed for months and months and years. Sometimes the DOT's got a 7-year project. That's correct. But a guy putting in a pool should not call it 18 times.
Or a
That should
plumber.
not happen. Or
Which
a
is-
plumber, exactly. So we have to, I think the catalyst, unfortunately, and I hope that I am wrong. I think the catalyst is going to be a tragedy, and I wish that I was wrong. I hope that I am wrong. But we're at max capacity. We have no more bandwidth, and we can't keep up with the amount of requests coming in. And that's just a recipe for disaster. I'm not trying to put a downer on it. I'm just trying to say that, we really as an industry need to take a look at this and do something that will make a difference.
And one question I have, I guess, for the group in general on that is, we've got a meeting, myself and Craig and Russ is going to join hopefully with a senator in Raleigh next week who had a constituent that came forward and asked about an exemption for aeration. Their concern, the concern of this person was that they didn't feel like they should need to call for that. Now, and then they started asking about depth. What is the depth, again, that people are installing power at, that they're installing telecom at? So we're going in front of this senator to talk to him and try to educate him about a few things. Obviously, the depth issue is something we want to explain. Secondly, the aeration, from what my research, could be done in a lot of different ways. It could be done with mechanized, where they take the plugs, but there's also non-mechanized means that people can use for aeration with little push things with tines and whatever, which would be exempt by today's law already as it stands. But the reason I bring this up is because there's a possibility that there might be interest in reopening our law for the purpose of this. And if that happens, this would be the opportunity while the hood is up if we want to do something to try to make adjustments that might assist with a few things. So one of the things we think about is right now the tickets they all ping off of the creation date. So even though you can call a ticket out 12 days from when you're going to actually do your work, once that ticket's issued, that obligates the operator to do it within 3 days. Doesn't 3 days from the work time? No, 3 days from the ticket being issued. That's something that can be clarified or fixed in the law to ping off of the time that they're actually going to begin the work, which would help a little bit with workload management. There's this ongoing conversation in the field right now about these updates. And there is a major facility operator that is refusing to mark updates. They're sending out a response to the excavator that this particular type of ticket is an update. Therefore, by law, you have to maintain this, Mr. Excavator, Ms. Excavator. And so that's your obligation. So we're not going to respond to that ticket. Now, I have concerns about that for multiple reasons, because I don't think that's really what the law says. For one thing, I think each notice is a notice and it has a requirement. But if the intent is to require excavators to maintain their marks through a project, That's a different animal altogether, and one in which I think the excavators are going to have a pretty strong set of feelings about, let's just say. But the only way this is going to work out if we do end up having to crack the law open because there's pressure from a legislator to do so, is that we do this as a team like we've done in the past. So that means we use the legislative committee within NC 811's legislative committee. We rally in stakeholders. We get lobbyists, notified and on board, and we put together the language that's going to be used to be put forth, and it be inclusive. Because if they're going to lift the hood up, let's fix these things that we think we can while we can't, and then put the hood back down. I mean, that's what my challenge is, I guess, to everybody here to think about, because I'm not sure what possible roads there are. I don't think the large project ticket in itself is an answer, but I know that that's a trigger that's been used in some states. I don't know that extending the ticket life is the answer from 20 to 30 days. That's certainly something that they've done in other states. And I'd be interested to hear from Mr. Kemp, because I know you're operating in multiple states and on the boards in multiple states, to hear what thoughts you have in a perfect world, if there was something that we could do in the law itself, based on the way it is today, that would help to assist this pressure that's there. What your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, Louis. So one of the things that I'm working on, you were there at the committee meetings with the CGA, and we started that working group, and we were hoping to actually bring to San Antonio some suggestions, because some of the states actually have their hands tied. I can't remember North Carolina's law, if our hands are tied here or not, but I know Indiana's is, and they're not allowed to make some of the movements that we're suggesting. So we're trying to come out, and what we're suggesting is for every state to actually do away with a mandatory start date. So we're not going to tie anybody's hands and say you must set this in your law. We're just saying loosen up your law so you don't say that a locate request must start in 48 hours or in 2 full working days. Some of the states who've already done this have already passed their legislation where it says things like a locate request must take place within 2 to 8 days, or 2 to 10, and some say 2 to 12 days, based upon different viewpoints. And that really helps them out, because then from that, if you can loosen up your laws a little bit, we've got a number of other ideas that we're starting to work on in some of the other states as well that we're looking at. One is that, Julie, you guys probably heard if you attended the CGA committee meetings there in Greensboro. We're really like this idea of a soft cap on locates for a day. And there's a number of ways that you could possibly take a look at it. Right now, Julie's still new. They're doing it mechanically. It's really based upon the load level is based upon a utility calling in and saying, hey, we are overloaded. There's no way we're going to be able to locate our locates at this time because there's just way too many of them. So I'm just basically giving you a for instance of what they're doing. And so then what happens is the call center takes a look back at, I think it's a 5-year average is what they're looking at now. I think that originally it was 3 years, but they're looking back at a 5-year average for that utility in their area and saying, is it greater than a 15% increase? If it's greater than 15%, then they're allowing them to put a soft cap on it, and they're suggesting to those who submit tickets, it's more than likely your tickets are not going to get located in 2 days. Are you willing to extend out and allow your tickets to be located in 3 days? And so what it does then with their law, the way it's set up, is that it doesn't actually originate the ticket until the next day, so that it'll be done 3 days from the origination of when somebody had requested it. So those are some suggestions. Those are some ideas. We all know. I'll tell you one of the biggest things, and you guys know this, is that you'll say, because we do this in every single one of our states as far as MetroNet, when I go specific to who we are and what we do, is that we work closely with the locating groups. Some of them better than others, just because we've been working with them longer. But I'm hoping that all utility locating groups that we'll be working with them at the same level eventually. But we meet with them and we forecast for them a year out in advance where we're going, what we're going to be doing, what can we do to help them to make sure that they're going to have the locating personnel that they're going to need. And the ones that we've been working with have actually done a really, really good job this year. This has been the first year that it's been really good compared to the past. It seems like in the past that some of them didn't ramp up when we told them, but this year they have. They've actually brought people in ahead of time. They've actually trained them and they've gotten them ready to go. Yes, we've got hiccups in certain areas. Yes, we're having to actually call them. We're having to do some things, but not as bad as in the past. And I'll tell you, the locating groups have told us if only everyone else, like Metronet and a few other clients, would actually forecast for us, it could help us get prepared. So I'm telling you, that's probably one of the biggest things from that side. But from the tickets management side, if we could loosen up our laws and get them to the point where it allows you to be able to move and do some things with your laws, like a soft cap, forecasting out and being able to do some things with those, I think that would help out a lot. So sorry, Lewis, that's a big snowball of things.
That's what I wanted to hear. That's really kind of the stuff I wanted to hear. I know Alabama, I think, was one of those states that did an adjustment on a flexible ticket creation time kind of thing when it was due. And I think they saw a reduction in the amount of updates and things like that as a result of it. I'd have to go back to Annette and get her actual numbers. But really, I just wanted to prep this group to be thinking about this, because in the past and up to now, for the most part, we've said we changed the law in 2019. That was the last one. Let's let it ride. But the concern is that two things. One, if it gets opened up without us, then we're going to get left behind. So if somebody is going to do it, we need to be in front of it with our bulleted list of things that we believe will be helpful as subject matter experts. And the second thing is there is a perfect storm. And when you tack on the infrastructure bill and you look at the amount of new contracts and things that are coming into the state, and they're with every intention of going as fast as they possibly can to keep those dollars and to the grants and things like that they're getting. That's the incentive. They've got a whip behind them to get as much of this fiber down and feed these rural people. So those are the two things that I would like to make sure that we're right front and center in everybody's mind here. There's a very good probability that we could have an opportunity, which we can hold off a little bit if we're going to take control and reconvene and actually get some items together for this. And then we need to think about this big picture as to what's coming around. And I know that's a slight deviation from course here, but it's significant and serious enough that I thought that this was an important group to discuss it. Because when we talk about locate resolution, these are the different mechanisms that we have to try to resolve some of the stress and strain on this process.
I agree with you, Lewis, and you've got my full support. I highly recommend that if this committee, I don't know if it's too fast for you guys to be able to do it this year, but look at changing the law so that you've got some flexibility. If you don't, man, your hands are going to be just handcuffed, and you're not going to be able to move until you do. I think we need to loosen up our laws a little bit so that we can get in there and do some things.
Well, we want to be specific. So when we say loosen up the law, I think we have to be, that's why I want to talk about the specific kind of parameters that we can do, because all of us here at the center believe that we should be triggering the 3 days of locates in advance of a work date, not by the ticket itself. And that's a simple thing systematically for us to be able to do. But you're right, the law right now, the way it reads, doesn't allow for that. So that would be one thing that we could do that would hopefully open things up. I don't know that people would be opposed to that voluntary suspension or delay of their work if they choose to be, meaning the excavators. But I don't think they're going to be interested, as any excavator, including the utilities, are going to be interested in hearing that they could be told that they're going to have to hold off or do something. If it's a voluntary effort on their part, because they recognize it's going to be a strain on the system or they may not get that locate on time, then that's different. But, again, we have to be real careful that every voice is at the table. And this is one thing that I've discovered through the courses of time that we've done these law changes already. We talk about this like there's this group excavators, and there's this group utilities, and there's this group locators, and then the government and DOT. But when you look at it, the utilities really are they're the drivers on the excavation. They are the drivers on the locate and the locate process, and they're the ones trying to protect what they have. So they should be able to put those three pieces together and come up with the best solution that's going to be allowing them to, and their contractors, to do work quickly and efficiently, and at the same time safely.
Louis, one more thing to add to give some people some information is that with all this research that we've been doing with the CGA working group, we've actually had some locating groups actually come to us with their statistics to be able to show us what the numbers are like on a daily basis from Monday through Friday. And when we actually start thinking about the soft caps and things like that, we start actually getting a little fidgety and say, well, what if we make it mandatory and some people aren't going to like it? And what are we going to do? When these locating companies came to us with the data, we were able to see you don't need to move that many to be able to make a good improvement to the situation, because we all know Mondays and Tuesdays, tons of locate requests, more than anybody can handle. But then when we came to Wednesday, Thursday, and possibly even on Friday, the numbers dropped down drastically. So they said, what if we could actually do something like a soft cap that could actually take just a small percentage of those? We could convince them to actually move them. And they showed that what would actually happen. And some of the states, because I know Missouri and Iowa and Maryland and even Georgia's doing some things here as well. There's a number of states who are doing some things with this idea. And they're already, some of these states are reporting back that just those small changes are making a great improvement in the situation.
To me, on that, Louis, it still goes back to pre-planning and scheduling your workout right. George, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but if the excavators, and the way I see a lot of it is the ones that's putting the noise in the system is not involved with the UCCs or anything like that, to where they're getting this information. That would be interesting to see. And I know we get the list of the companies and everything like that that's doing excessive updates. And if you look at that, very seldom, if any time, do you ever see them at a UCC meeting or anything that's affiliated with 811. So we're sort of beating our heads against the wall, because the ones that want to eliminate this or have the reduction in the numbers and things like that are the ones that's at these meetings, parts of these committees and everything else, but yet it's the ones that don't participate in anything.
Well, and on that one, the PF Plumbing is a good example. So they stuck out as a thumb, because if you look below that, a lot of these other companies are doing work for or are the utilities, right? But there's this plumbing contractor that was just killing it with these 438, updates with 2 or more, with 1 day or less duration. That's a very specific sore thumb sticking right out. That Ann, you want to talk a little bit about what was done in that case?
Yeah, so yesterday, as I was reviewing some of the reports, kind of getting ready for today, I know we've talked about this PF Plumbing over and over, and so I went back and I looked and started looking at our reports from the beginning of the year, and have found that they're either the top one or they're number 2. I think they even dropped down in February to number 4. So we know that there is truly an issue with this particular company. So when we dive in, then we see, okay, well, how can we control it? Can we go to our member utility? Well, they're not doing work for a member utility. So now we're left to, we got to figure out how we can hit them from multiple areas. And so when I started looking at how they were putting their tickets in, they are using remote ticket entry. So immediately I went to Wendy and I said, certainly, there's not an issue with how they're placing their tickets. The issue is the overabundance of updates. And so I was able to get her to send information to them, just reminding them. And then I got Parrish on the phone because we dug into the tickets to kind of see the area. And, they're over in the Guilford area. They're up in the Alamance area. So now we can figure out, well, where are they at? They're over in Winston-Salem. And so Parrish reached out to them, talked to the lady that's placing the tickets. And as we all know, it's typically someone that's asked to, just peck away, load a bunch of tickets. And then we started, well, okay, well, who else can we reach out? Can we reach out to the field contact? Well, this lady was receptive as we thought she was. And a little bit later, we were emailing back and forth, and Lewis was willing to get in the mix of it. But luckily, a supervisor did respond back and speak with Parrish and said, hey, we are so sorry. We're going to go ahead. We see 60 tickets right now. We're going to go ahead and we're going to clean those out of the system. And we're going to start looking at these additional tickets, because we're talking every month, 400 plus tickets. And it's just, update after update after update. These are, this is a plumbing company working for home builders. And I'm sure we all know there are residential home building going on everywhere across the state now. And so this is something that we're going to see continuously. And from some of the other aspects, we're hearing that, well, the home builders are requiring them to go ahead, keep those tickets updated. And then when all the permits come in, then, they can do the work. But when this one was 20 times. There were multiple tickets that were updated 20 times for something that says 1 day or less. There's just no absolute reason. So fingers crossed, we hope that we can make some of this go away, and hopefully, in the next couple months, see them, drop considerably down on that report. So that one, we were hopefully able to make some shift change, but we've got to depend on you all as members to really make a difference. And I know, just hearing some of this stuff, yes, it's a perfect storm. But while we're at the UCCs, we're now hearing, so from you members that have contractors, we hear stories from them is, hey, we're against the wall too. If we don't get this product in the ground for them, they're going to terminate us. And so I just want you guys to, be thinking about that as well. In some of the shift changes, could you change, adding some additional days to allow them to get the product in the ground? Would that help? Just as we said, maybe little slight changes could help the overall process. I'm just gonna just flat lay it out. They're scared. I'm telling you, some of these contractors are flat scared, because if they don't get it in the ground, they're going to lose their contract. So what does that mean? That also affects, they have to terminate people. They now are, a lot of times they're small contractors. And so, that just grows and grows. And then it becomes a mental health issue that, I know Roger and I, we've talked about it at the NUCA meeting. So there's a perfect storm on every front. And the more we can help each other, the better. So what I'm doing on some of these reports, obviously they all go to the top 5 members, but then when I see, updates like for ANSCO, I'm pulling those out And I know Tim's on the call. I'm sending that to Tim and say, hey, can you guys please take a look at these update tickets and see what can you do to pull out of it? So that's what we're doing on our end to try to help you. And so fingers crossed, maybe that PF plumbing will, be a great success story in another month or two. So.
Well, it's like,
Yeah.
and
Go
when
ahead.
we started this and Sam Gonzalez and all of that, we started these meetings and everything. And I always go back to what was Sam's biggest thing? We've got to clean our own house. Before we can point fingers to anybody else, you've got to clean your own house. Not that our company is any better than anybody else's, but every 2 weeks at our management meetings, we have a printout of all of our tickets, and it is given to every superintendent to go over there and take off the tickets that does not need to be updated anymore. Even if a company did it once a month, not every 2 weeks, but if they did it once a month, I think we would see a reduction in a lot of these numbers.
Well, that is going to be the emphasis too. If there's one theme that comes out of the DIRT report, we've discussed this multiple times. It may even be part of the cover art, but it's the idea of the mirror. And, people need to look in the mirror to see what is their ability to control or contribution to damages in the process. What is it that you have control over that you could do just a little differently or instruct people to do a little differently that could make a difference in this? Because it's going to be, it's challenging now, right? You see these numbers going up into 35, 36% in some of these heavy counties of already loaded down. And I'm looking down south in South Carolina. I think they had a 26 or 28% volume increase in a month over the previous month, previous year. And I'm telling you that we've been pretty fortunate here in that we've seen a roughly 8%. I think maybe for the year we'll end up around 8 or 9, but probably single digits this year. But I don't think that's not gonna hold up, and that's the state. So there are definitely pockets where it's way higher. And so I think we just need to be prepared for that in whatever way we can, whatever we can do. A huge kudos to the gas companies that are giving me these lists. Mark, I'm still waiting on Corey's. I guess I sent him an email yesterday, but I got the batch from I got the other batch from Duke, and I went ahead
Okay.
and
What ending month? What ending month would you like? I think Corey's probably waiting for third quarter, but if you want something now, I can get.
Yeah, because I talked to him about that, and he can just give us the last 2 months, and that'll be enough. Okay. Because I think it's better to do it more timely than not.
Right.
So I got about 56 letters that are poised and heading out for the others. And then I get your database and we'll add those on. And for everybody else who's on this call, these are no call damages that are reported to me from a database, basically from the gas companies. And I'm just sending them a letter. It's basically just a letter saying that we're aware of this report, want to make sure you're aware of the law, and nothing harsh or strong, but it's coming from me with my signature on it. A reminder that there is enforcement, in the state of North Carolina. The last batch of letters we sent out, I did get some calls on it. It's got my phone number right on it. They can call me and I can talk to them. If I won't necessarily have the specifics, but I can direct them back to the companies and they can go over the specific damages. But in some cases, the people who received the letters weren't even aware or didn't know, or they normally do call in tickets, but they didn't in this case. And those are the circumstances I'm mostly interested in. I don't believe that. I think the contractors have shown that there's a high level of understanding and knowledge about 811. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's you're hard pressed to say that, 75, only the 25% of excavators don't know about it. No, I'm sorry. That's not borne out by surveys or the facts. So there's some conscious decision making going on. And in some cases, it's because they're frustrated. The process doesn't seem to be working. In some cases, it's about time. They just want to get ahead of it. They don't want to wait. They'll take the risk. A lot of times it's a risk money balance that they're making. They're making a choice. So we need to better understand those kinds of issues and try to direct energies to get those things to stop and suppress.
I'll get those, I'll get I guess July and August is what you're looking for. I'll get to you those numbers this afternoon. I'll copy Corey and Gus and let them know that I did that. Also, I sent I mean, I hate to be a bad boy and typing while we're discussing, but our excavators, half of their tickets are short-term tickets. They're service line installations. They're retiree new service lines. Half of the tickets they do for those are update tickets. And I have given the data. This time I underlined, we need to make changes, and let them know that I've heard more and more talk about changes to the law outside of this conversation, and we need to get ahead and be part of it. So but we need to clean up our house, and we have to quit fussing about everybody else and clean up our house first, and we have not taken those actions.
Yeah, and you know, we never want to have the law change foisted upon us. We don't want to suddenly have, you know, see that there's a bill coming out that's got something in it and we were blindsided as a group, because one of the reasons we have such good continuity in the state and stakeholder relationships is because everybody's had a voice. And there, you know, lobbyists from each of the different groups were all in lockstep, and that's how these bills get passed. So, you know, depending on what happens next week, I'm pretty certain we're going to want to pull together the legislative committee from NC 811 and open the doors to some other participation beyond that group to sit and do what we did, which is hammer out what are the changes that we think need to be done, and discuss the ramifications of those. You know, because I know.
Do you want to see this coming from being driven by NC 811 or driven by? I would think outside of NC 811.
I would prefer it be done outside. Yes, I think that's how we've done it in the past, right? Yeah. It just feels weird to have a legislative committee at NC 811 that's on the sidelines. I mean, it feels like they reported stuff that was going on, but I really think that someone's going to have to take charge on this, and we have had that success where you get somebody driving the bus with a senator who's going to champion it, and you know, and they get everybody fired up, and we get the right people at the table. And you know, that's like the justices, and you know, that's definitely the excavators. Chris Russ was there from the locator perspective to make sure some things happened. I think we had a really big cross section. We had DOT there, a lot of telecom folks that were there. Duke was there. You know, I mean, we had a lot of folks there participating with it. And at the end of the day, that language, not everybody was thrilled, but that's how you know that it was a compromise and it got done, and it was probably the best way to get it done. So I know we're coming into what we would normally think is sort of the slow season. This might be the opportunity to put our noses down and get ready to work on this as a group.
Slow season last week was 5% higher than our highest week ever.
Yeah, I know. I know the almanac's calling for a bunch of snow this year, right? Because of the fog or something. I don't know. Maybe the snow will slow things down in the winter, but yeah, I don't know.
So I would like to add, just, you know, we're talking about the communication. One of the things that we've noticed as I'm talking with my team every Monday is some of the, you know, a lot of the UCCs actually, we're seeing less people attend the UCCs. Granted, you know, you can look at it from many different ways. Is it because there's so much work going on, they don't have time to attend? Is part of it, you know, from COVID, you know, that people are just not, you know, getting back engaged. And so we're having to, you know, find other ways to communicate with them to make sure, you know, maybe they're not getting the constant contact, or we're trying to add them to the invites. We're trying many different ways to get these folks to the table. But one interesting thing that I found from Howard Monday was he had a gentleman say to him, well, you know, now with COVID, we're only coming into the office maybe twice a week. And it just so happens the UCC falls on the day that we're not in the office. And so we're not making the effort to come to the UCCs because we're not in the office. So I found that very interesting. And just, as a plea, ask your contractors, you guys as members, please come to these meetings because it is so vital that we communicate. And as we said, it's only going to get worse. We've got to talk to each other. And I know everybody's busy, but I promise there will be dividends at the end if we can all be in the same room, communicate about these issues, plan these projects. I think it's really going to help. So that's my plea, is to try to get your folks to these meetings.
The other thing I was thinking about too is a lot of these updates is it material shortage driven.
Some of that could be. Some of that could be supply chain things. I thought I was going to have my stuff here to do my work, and then I don't. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a contributor. I mean, it's hard for us to know, sitting here in a vacuum, just looking at numbers. You guys probably know better than anybody what those drivers are. I mean, you should be able to hear it from folks. If it's a process breakdown because somebody's in the office and someone's over here and doing the work and they're not communicating, that's something that's fixable. If it's something else that has to do with when permits are being pulled or approved, or the work's being, there's other kinds of things. We need to understand what those are too, and so we can figure out some way to address it. And I honestly don't know if the concept of putting it on the excavator to manage marks that are laid down once through the length of their project and refreshing those marks, I want everyone to think long and hard about what that means in terms of the integrity to your systems. Because and the burden it places on them too, but I don't think that was the purpose. I think a legitimate update is a legitimate update. A destroyed marks ticket when they're destroyed, absolutely, that's a legitimate thing that's out there and needs to be done. But be aware that there are folks that are definitely going down that road, and until it's tested somewhere, we won't know how that holds up. But at some point, it will get tested. There'll be a damage. And, and they'll say that, well, they didn't come out and mark. And they'll say, well, the law says that we don't have to because this is an update. And then that's where it's going to get to, the rubber's going to hit the road and it's going to get challenged somewhere. So
I think I got the same email you got on that, Lewis. That was interesting.
I think so. Yeah, and it's not the first that we've heard of that. This is a conversation we've had about a year ago as this was being introduced. So, but it's interesting to see it in black and white. So obviously some attorney somewhere decided that was legit, and they're putting it in writing right there. So anyway, I'll get off the soapbox, but be prepared because a lot of things are in flux. Let's just say. And I know we've totally steered off the agenda. So where is that thing?
Sorry about that. I think we pretty much finished up the reports. Were there any other reports you wanted to look at? Did you want to look at the 3-hour?
Yeah, pull up the 3-hour report by county. Okay. This is another one that I did similar to the updates, where we took the 3 hours going back to September of last year, and then taking the last month and sorting them by the highest percentage county and going down. Interestingly enough, if you go up there, it's Mecklenburg at the top on 3-hour notices in terms of a percentage, not even raw numbers. These are percentages, folks. Their percentage with all that volume is there. You go further down and you have to go a pretty good ways to get to another, Wakes down there at 23. But when we look at it, and again, these are expanded, the tabs are condensed just to show you the percentages. but the volumes are all in there too. I just have to unlock those ones that I've hidden, unhide them. But this is a representation, and this is another area that we're going to be looking at damages as a function of 3-hour notices. So as we see the numbers go up in a particular county of this particular type of ticket, does that correlate in some way to more damages? And what happened in Duplin? I mean, they jumped to 10%. They were at 1.7 in December, and then they jumped up to 10, almost 11% in February. Then it dropped back down. So I don't know if that was a weather issue, or because if you look around, if it was a locate issue, I'm scrolling and looking down to see several of the counties did have a good jump, but the rest of them kind of kept going up, whereas that one dropped back down in March. So I don't know what that was about. And then you see
And
May.
two, it could, just because the overall tickets are very
So low.
minimal, those
Yeah.
percentages would be very high.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true too.
So, yeah.
I mean, the focus really, I'm mostly interested in things like Guilford and
Mhm.
Durham and Wake and Mac and that.
Mhm. Well, Lewis, yesterday, talking about the 3-hour tickets, prime example, we had to do one, and it was with our boring crew. Locator goes out and still fails to get a fiber optic located. So there we had to do another one to get the fiber located. So, I mean, honestly, we did 2 yesterday. And I am not knocking the locators. They're in the same boat as everyone on this call and everybody else. You're getting who you can get to go to work. And I hate to say it, but we're not getting the brightest light bulbs in the chandelier.
Well, and the other, if you're looking at other factors and this is something the CGA, I mean, you sort of have to expand your reach to out of the state and say, what are some of the other things that could make improvements into the process? And maps always comes up at the top of the list. Keeping your maps updated, sharing your maps, making sure that you're registering facilities with the one calls as you're adding it on. We've had a couple circumstances where, there was a damage and nobody was claiming it because it wasn't represented on a map somewhere yet. But if you're the locator, that's one of the important, critical things that you want to have in your hand is an accurate map of the facilities and the path. Same goes if you're the excavator. If you've done SUE and you've got a nice project plan that shows exactly what you're going to do, well, guess what? That information shared with the locators gives them extra binoculars basically into where you're going to be, where they can focus their attention on, and makes their job easier. So maps is it's going to be a real centerpiece in conversation, both from technology and transparency. I think those to me are the two things: how rapidly they're being redlined and updated, and then the transparency factor. How are they being shared with the people who need to see them? I get Homeland Security, but a lot of times we lean on that as a reason not to share, and it's really not that in a lot of cases. It's competitive, and I get it. There's all those kinds of issues going on, but the mapping is one of the reasons. If Ralph was here, he would tell you that they had such a successful project on that gas install. That's 30 miles with no damages, because they had those plans, they shared them, the locators knew where they were going to be, they were in coordination constantly, and guess what? They finished ahead of time, got the job done. And George knows this too with MetroNet. I mean, having the plan laid out clearly. Here's our path. Here's what we're going to do. Here's our expectations of footage for this month, next month, the month out. Here's the next quarter beyond that, so that people can get prepared. And and Jody, I'm sure you're dealing with this too. But this is the thing: is communication, transparency, all that's really critical. And I know I'm preaching to the choir to this group, but my blood pressure's going up, Ann. What else we got on the agenda over here? Well, I talked about that
No more
offender
reports.
list. Yeah, no, the offender list, I'm getting that information. And basically quarterly, I'm going to send these letters out. What I'm hopeful for is that we'll see some of these companies fall off the list. We'll see that the number of those damages that are being reported because of no call go down, at least for those operators. And that's just another communication piece that puts it in front of them, that people are aware that this has occurred, especially when it's weird for me when it's a municipality that I know knows to call. Why didn't they in these cases? So I really want to get more into that. And with that, I'm going to give my voice a rest and pass it on over to Ann for the review board update.
Sure. So I guess our next meeting coming up is on October the 18th. And unfortunately for me, that kind of coincides with our CGA meetings, but we will be hosting that meeting at the event center. I know from our last meeting, we had about 19 cases, and as we've seen, a lot of those cases are coming from our pipeline operators. And and out of that, a couple things that really stuck out from our last ones were some electrical contractors that were driving ground rods without locates, and clearly seeing that there were gas meters right there in the area. So that was definitely a concern. So when I put my NC 811 hat back on, that's just one of the things that we've been talking about, just reminding folks to, reach out to those electricians to make sure that they do have locates for those ground rods. The other thing is we were scheduled for a hearing, and after the attorneys met, it was determined that there has to be an additional notice time to the person receiving the hearing. And so we did cancel that hearing, and it should be, I guess, forthcoming. We don't have it set on the calendar as of yet, but we did have the attorney that we had from the DOJ is no longer with us. So we're receiving different counsel, and then they were having to hire a person. So we're kind of in the flux of that, getting that, permanent person on board with the review board. But otherwise, everything seems to be going pretty well on that. And for those that are not aware, Megan Riley, she will be, shifting off of the board, and plus she's having a baby as well. So we were really hoping that we could get that hearing in before she went out on maternity leave, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. So it will fall up under, I guess, the new chair, which will most likely be Jonathan Holt. So everything seems to be going good on that end. We are working with the Department of Commerce to try and update our website. Our ultimate goal is to take the cases that are, received, and to tie those to the docket numbers. So that's kind of a long-term, what we want to do with, I guess, information that's, I mean, we get requests all the time. Well, how do I find these cases once they get docketed? You just have to search it. You go out to the Utility Commission, search that docket for the Underground Damage Prevention Review Board, and then literally just go one by one. Unfortunately, there's just not a great process for that right now, but we are working on that in hopes to tie that. We have determined that we do have a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Commerce to manage that website. And so our hopes are that we will, start adding more information. But just want a reminder, each time, go to that website, you'll see the date of the meeting, and through the rest of the year, which we only have that, the October one meeting coming up. We've just asked that no one come into the event center until after this one's over. You can join by phone, and then hopefully in 2023, then we'll have everything back open, to the public as far as, coming on site. But otherwise, I think for the most part, things are going well. Bottom line is if you fall within that matrix, based on the culpability or circumstance, you're going to get a fine and training. And then, of course, the training is still the Pipes Plus. So other than that, that's pretty much an update of what's going on.
You said the next meeting is October 18th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. All right, Dan, there's your agenda back.
All right. Oh, great conversation so far. Wow. Yeah. So I think now we're at project coordination. Does anybody have any updates for major projects and stuff that they're working on or they've got coming up? Yeah, I mean, Duke, I know it's got projects out the yin yang, but the specifics around it, there's no way I could speak to all of them. We're talking about the UCCs though. I feel like that is something I could do a better job of, is trying to get more local folks to join those. Sometimes easier said than done, but I'll just put that plug out there for the UCCs for if you guys to reach out to the local folks and see if they can't spare a couple minutes and join those and be of some use. And same with the contractors too. I'll take that action too to try to get our contractors more involved in those as well, because I think that's where the big impact is going to be. But and then we can start open discussions. Really, I know there's the list, but I can just kind of kick things off. Working with like the updates and all that good stuff. I mean, everybody can see we're up there high. Our contractors up there pretty high. Some of the issues that we face is supply chain, timeliness for locates. There's a lot of different factors that I'm finding out from different things. So for supply chain, it's not necessarily any one thing that they're having an issue getting to be able to complete that job, right? So the crews assigned to it, and take utility lines, that's top of the list. We assign them a job, and they take off from there. We have kind of commit dates, say like 10 days or whatever. And I know George was talking about maybe relaxing the law a little to give some time, like 2 to 8 days. It sounds good all in all, but in order to meet commitments and to be able to plan that, leaving that kind of big window there it makes going to make it kind of tough. So for some of those jobs, if we get we have a 10-day commitment, right? So we can assign the job and say utility lines, they create the ticket. Well, when the ticket's created, materials and everything are in hand, but that's not the only job that everybody's working on, right? So there may be another job that comes up that they have to use some of that equipment for, that material, that takes away from the jobs that they just called in. By the time that locates actually get done, there's only 2-3 days left on that ticket. So it technically had to be updated the day before the locates actually, are all completed and stuff. So there's a lot there with the locates getting done. And of course, the supply chain stuff, most of the materials are there when the ticket's requested. But like I said, if other jobs come up where locates are complete, that they could move on and do that one, then it could take away from that pole, light arm, whatever the case may be. So it is kind of it's a challenge to really dig in to figure out, how we manage all that aspect of it. The other part of it is just the education piece of it. And I meet with our, main contractors every month, and we kind of talk through some of the issues that are popping up with some of these. And a lot of them it's just that, trying to get responses from everybody. And unfortunately, I can't tell them, go do the work. If you don't have a positive response, that's, I can't tell them that they could, to do that. So they have to wait for the positive response from everybody to show up. You know, and they're talking about earlier with the unlocatable fibers and stuff. That's a big issue on a lot of the tickets too. So you'll have everything will be completed, but you'll have this fiber out there that says it's unlocatable. And what do you do there? I mean, you're waiting for weeks. But so a lot of them are keeping the tickets going. We had an incident with a railroad trying to get permits for some tickets. They talked with them about that and trying to see if they could, you know, work around it. You know, when you have somebody telling you that, you know, well, yeah, we'll have your permits ready, you know, in a couple of days, then you know, keep the ticket going. Well, that couple of days turns into a couple of weeks, but every time you talk to them, you know, we'll have it ready in a couple of days. So that's another animal we're trying to work through. Let's see some of these other updates for those, like if there is a known supply chain issue, you know, to hold off on updating that ticket. You know, that is something we're kind of educating folks about, especially the RTE users, where they're able to come in later and update that ticket, you know, after what, nearly 90 days or whatever. A lot of folks don't realize that, so they can kind of let that ticket drop off. But yeah, it's a work in progress, and it's a heavy task, but we're working on it.
And I imagine it's a moving target too. It's not like it's any one, you know, it's like any one thing at any one time. It can be different things happening. And I know when Dean Yancey was here, we went around a couple times to some of the Duke designers and people that were putting in tickets and explain the process to them so that they had a better understanding when they were putting the tickets in and what happens on the back end of it. And that was helpful, you know, but I think you've outlined several items there that all can be contributors, and they could be in different areas and different affecting different places at different times. So.
Yep. And about the
I
time
think the
you
idea of
get,
just making sure our contractors are trained on what's available and making sure they're not updating that ticket 8 times while they're waiting for a builder to get done with something, that we can let that ticket lie out there and renew it or update it. However many weeks later we can do that and not have to keep on calling in updates. That is a big thing that we probably should spend time with our own excavators.
yep. And I've been trying to talk with them and educate them too on, because a lot of the feedback you get is, you know, we were having to update it because nobody responded, or, you know, such and such didn't respond. And, well, did you call them? I mean, just continually updating a ticket is not going to solve an issue. And, you know, you have some companies out there that are kind of screening tickets. Continually updating that ticket that's being screened is not the solution. It's just going to be screened again. You're not going to get anywhere. So, you know, let's take an extra step here. There are other contacts on that ticket, you know, that if it's, you know, damaged contact or what have you, I mean, you know, reach out to them and start seeing
I
what you
think
can
that
figure
was
out.
a shot at me, Dan.
It wasn't, no, sir. But yeah, you know, there's those options too that folks just don't, whether they want to take the time or they're just not certain of the process. You know, they don't know what they don't know. You know, they don't know what's available to them. And I mean, you know, Tammy, all of Ann's team, you know, just I share their information all the time. You know, reach out to Tammy or Parrish or
Yeah.
Howard. You know, they'll help you.
And, you know, Dan, just kind of adding on to that, one of the biggest features that we've been trying to share with folks over the last year and so on is, if you have that flexibility of using the remote ticket entry and you're not currently working, just don't update the ticket. Leave it in the system. And I think we've spent so many years telling them, you know, after, you know, the life of the ticket, once it's dead, it's dead. But we have that ability, if that ticket's still in the system, nothing's changed, you can go back and you can update that same ticket. So we're trying to, you know, get that message out to the folks as much as we can. Certainly, you know, the RTE department, there are other great resources too as well to remind those folks. But
you know, once again, just another little process that we can add to it to help people manage those tickets.
Yep. And then, you know, too, not without, we don't want to call anybody out, and, you know, it is, you know, one of our contractors, but about the time you get something semi figured out and you get, you know, folks lined up and contacts and everything, they have kind of like a reorg, and now you're starting from scratch again. So, definitely a lot of challenges out there. So, you know, I appreciate everybody's patience. I know I don't like seeing Duke and Duke's contractors at the top of these lists, but it is a heavy task, and we are working on it, I promise. Now, if we go down the list, and or just kind of just open it up to roundtable and let folks kind of chime in and see if you got any updates or any thoughts, suggestions, ideas.
Unfortunately, I'm not prepared to give a report for AT&T. I know we still have a pretty big build going on. Tim might be able to assist with that a little bit, perhaps, but we do have a big build going on, and I know that we're cognizant of flooding the system with unnecessary tickets, and we strive to make sure that we only update tickets when we absolutely have to. It just adds noise.
Yeah, we're definitely real busy for the the rest of the year and all. So things are kind of crazy out there right now. Not only with locates, but just basically just trying to get help to get all this work done and everything. So definitely all of us have got some challenges out there, and definitely looking to work together to do what all we need to do to make things work just as smoothly as we can.
Yeah, and from a charter perspective, I mean, we're continuing with our build. I mean, it's very aggressive. And someone mentioned it earlier. We are having supply chain issues, and that's going to be some of the updates that we're calling in. But also the market is so busy right now. Help or keeping help is very difficult too. So I mean, we went through quite a bit of different contractors, will be here, they're calling in locates, and then the crew decides not to show up and we have to go a different route. So I think, as Lewis mentioned, over the next few years, it's going to be very interesting, I think. But from a charter perspective, we'll do what we can. We're trying to partner with the larger locators, providing zip code information on a monthly basis on where our plans are to be. And also, we're trying to attend some of the UCCs, but I will tell you that not only my company, but our, the contractors are really not still big on meeting in huge groups at this point in time, but hopefully we can get back to that, because I think that's where a lot of this stuff gets worked out.
Yep, I absolutely agree with you and completely understand the big meetings and stuff, big groups. Yeah. Definitely a challenge.
This is Bob with Segra. Everything's been talked about regarding updates. I will say this though, our locators are having the same issues that Mark spoke to earlier on in the meeting. There's just so many locates to be done, and the excessive volume of update tickets. They are just doing everything they can to keep up. We're actually having a meeting with our locate contractor tomorrow because of damages, not only to our plant, but to other plant from other utilities in the last few months. And I know what I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear that they're doing everything they can. They're swimming upstream to have enough help, qualified help, to be able to do these locates. So we definitely have reached a apex of issues, and I don't know that we've reached the apex. To be honest with you, I think we're still climbing uphill on it, and I do believe that, like everyone else, supply stream issues have helped to create this issue. But I was looking at, our ticket volume this year compared to last year is really kind of flat. And when I say our ticket volume, I mean the number of tickets that Segra has received for locates, for all utilities. So, I mean, it's an increase. Don't get me wrong; it's an increase over last year, but it's. I'm going to say it's somewhere. Looks like to be somewhere around 5% as opposed to 8%. Although it's not much, but on the volume of tickets, it is. So I just think that, I think it's a good idea to look at rewriting the law. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm right there with you, Dan. I know in Virginia, I believe the life cycle of a ticket is right at 30 days, but then they allow them to call in a full mile on a single ticket as opposed to a quarter mile. I don't know that that's an answer. I do know that the ticket volume in Virginia is akin to South Carolina, and both of them are below what our volume is in North Carolina. So there's just a lot of underground activity everywhere you go. In some states, it's greater than others. The reality is how we get our contractors to manage the projects more effectively is the issue. And Dan, you made the point. Everyone is under pressure to get things done and to get them done in a timely fashion. I don't think we can get them to see the forest for the trees. Calling in, project tickets. It's one thing to call in a project ticket and meet on it and say, this is the scope of the project. It's another thing then to call in a handful of tickets on that project that can be managed over the course of 30 days instead of calling in the whole 20 miles. I'm just using numbers here, but the thought process is let's just call it all in. Well, that's the most ridiculous approach that I've ever heard. I was listening to the example earlier, and Lewis, I think it was you that, or it may have been Ann, contractor was going to do work on both sides of the street, but they're only going to work on the east side to begin with. And then they're going to switch to the west side. Well, don't call in both sides of the stinking road. That's just it's confusing for the locators. Call in what you're going to work. Then when you get ready to go to the other side, then call in those tickets. This is a buffoonery to call in both sides of the road when you're only going to be working on one side in a dedicated fashion until you're done. So I think there's, to Ann's point and Lewis's as well, there's still a lot of education that needs to be done. Not only, with all contractors, Segra's contractors as well. And it is an ongoing effort. I think we do have an opportunity, Lewis, to come together collectively and come up with a locate law that will work to benefit all member utilities and all excavators in North Carolina. I don't know what the real answer is. I do think that, maybe we ought to put a limit. One thing to consider is put a limit on the life cycle of a ticket, i.e., you call in a ticket, but then you can only update that ticket twice, or you can only update it 3 times. After that, tough. Open a new ticket. And you can reference the old ticket, but open a new ticket. I think that would be beneficial. And that's it. I'll stop spitballing from there.
I don't disagree. That's another one of those things that has been kicked around and discussed. Limiting the number of updates before you're forcing them back to the table. On the one hand, I think that would help to reduce the number of updates. On the other hand, I think nature abhors a vacuum, so I think it'll just fill it in with other new tickets. But that being said, things that we can put in there that help manage workload for the locator, that this is where it seems to be this is where the bottleneck seems to be, right? There needs to be some more balance between the work that's going on and then the expectations to take care of getting it marked. And I don't know what the answer is, quite frankly. You can put in some different things to allow for some management, but ultimately, the same companies that want to get their locators out there also have another arm of their business that's saying, no, we got to go. We're going to do what we can, but we can't have our people sitting idle either. And if those locates aren't getting done, meaning somebody else, I got to have other places for them to go. So I know I have my trucks and my people sitting around, and I understand that argument from the excavators. And this is where I've said it before. It's kind of like a snake eating its tail.
Right.
It just gets worse and worse because neither side has faith. Not neither side, but I mean, each side gets beat up a little bit to the point that the locators say, I can't do this anymore. I can't catch up. The excavator says, yeah, you're right. You're not catching up. So I'm going to do these other steps because I'm going to make sure that I'm covered. But all they've done is pile on basically to the thing. And those are all education points. But even on the both sides of the road thing, I mean, I get that from the CYA perspective, but where that's fixed is the communication directly with those guys running the job, the people who are on the actual piece of equipment, the spotter and the one who's running the HDD drill equipment, communicating daily with their path, where they're going to be with a locator or a supervisor of that locator on a daily morning basis. This is what I need today to get done. Don't go blind off the ticket. Don't expect that the ticket's going to solve all your woes. Let's have a communication about it, because they could hit something that some blockage obstacle that's going to require them to go to the other side. And you know what else? The locators are a hell of a good instrument for the excavator when they can share and say, look, I'm just going to tell you based on my records, it's super congested up there in this where you're headed. You're going to be better off crossing and going over there. And they communicate through this. And so that's where sharing and transparency and the mapping and all that stuff really comes into play too. And I think we've got a lot of hardworking people that just want to get the job done and want to do it safe. And we've just got to figure out what we can do to help them in that.
Great.
Hey, Bob, I have a question for you since you're on. I know at the UCC meeting when we were in Mecklenburg, I understand you guys have a name change or a reorganization. Can you kind of share so that I understand completely what's going on with you guys?
Well, the latest change was when Lumos Networks merged with Spirit Communications. Spirit Communications had several different arms, but the majority of the locates were done under Spirit. With the merge of Lumos and Spirit, it became Segra, or DBA Segra. So all of our marks should say Segra. Now, there was an acquisition that took place last year. Parent company is now Cox Enterprises. However, that has no bearing on any of our agreements or any of our operating. Cox became the bank. How's that? It's really no different than 9X owned New England Telephone, New York Telephone, et cetera, right? So we're owned by Cox, but we will continue to operate as Segra. So there won't be any changes as far as that goes. So now you bring up a good question though, Ann. We're having an issue in Virginia where the locators are confused between Lumos Telephone handhold covers and Lumos Networks, and we have new ones that say Segra. So we don't have that issue in the Carolinas. We have the issue may be that you have Spirit Communications, you may have Segra, but in either case, they're both the same company. So the response on the ticket that they receive is issued to Segra now. It's what is it? I forgot. Oh no, it's still PAL 01, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But when they go out in the field, they're either going to see a Spirit Communications handhold lid cover or they'll see a Segra handhold lid cover. So our locators are aware of that. I don't know if other contractors. I don't know if they'll have an issue with it, but if they do, that would be the communication end. That Segra Communications or Segra Communications. They got me doing it. Segra is either Segra in North Carolina or Spirit Communications, but it's the same company.
Okay, so we're not seeing a difference like Lumen, whereas the long haul is Lumen And the residential side is going to Brightspeed.
Right. And yeah, I can appreciate the confusion there, because their handhold covers might be CenturyLink. I don't know if if Lumen was, before CenturyLink in North Carolina, they were Embark. But so this is the thing with the telecommunications. It's a huge community, but it's really small. Mergers and acquisitions take place on a regular basis, and in order to keep doing business, we don't change. Our company name encompasses all the previous companies. Verizon is a huge one for that. You got Verizon, you got CP Telephone, you got GTE in some place. It just depends on where you're at. But they operate, it's literally a DBA. Verizon is a DBA for a host of companies. So I can appreciate how it's confusing out there. So yeah, Lumen, actually, I think pretty much was long haul, for lack of a better way to say it, the CLEC side of CenturyLink. And then, what'd you say, I've lost it. The
Brightspeed.
Brightspeed is the new
Yeah.
ILEC. Down here in Texas, Windstream does business as what's it called? Kinetics. So, it just depends on where they're at and how they brand their operating company. But the parent company is still the same. In our case, Segret is the parent company, just Cox is our bank, if you will. How's that?
That answers my questions.
Yeah, we ran into a problem in Virginia because Cox does business in Virginia, and everybody kept asking when we were going to change our name to Cox, and that wasn't part of the acquisition. Segret is still a standalone company. You're welcome. Didn't realize that question would come up down there, Ann. Thank you.
It's getting more convoluted day by day.
Yeah, in the space, both in the ground and on the poles, is getting more congested every day.
Yes.
To be honest, on the poles, a lot of that has to do with microcells because of 5G. But and quite frankly, this is North Carolina. 85% of what we do is in the ground. Actually, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And the rest of our company's footprint, the other 7 states, 85% of what we do is aerial. So we have the inverse problem in the north where, we're on congested poles. So I suspect as things become more timely in the Carolinas, we may see more aerial work being done just because the ground is getting so congested. We'll see how that trend bears out.
Thank you. Any others? All right. Oh, it's kind of quiet. Good. All right. I don't have anything else. Ann, is there anything else that we got?
No, sir, not
here?
to my knowledge. Let me
Looks
look
like
and
next-
see.
Yeah, it looks like next meeting is November 16th. So yeah, get that on your calendars and yeah.
Yes,
well,
November
all right.
16th.
Okay, good deal.
Just for those that are on the call, if you have not signed in and will you please? If not, I do have record, at least of your name. So I shouldn't have a problem, creating that sign-in list. Dino, it's good to have you. We miss you.
Miss you too, sweetheart. Thank you for listening and inviting me.
Welcome. Lewis, anything else on your end?
No, like I said, stay tuned. I will let folks know what's going on with the senator, but I would just ask people to think about if the law were to be opened up, what would be the things you would want to change? Be thinking about that, and if you're willing to work on behalf of your companies with the group, I think, prepare yourself. Kind of think about it, get ready for it. This is a good possibility that it's going to happen. And we just want to make sure we do it right. I don't want anybody feeling like they got left on the sidelines, at the end of the day on this one. We want to be really clear about all that up front.
Yep. So get you a wish list together.
Yep.
When is that meeting again with
we're meeting with Lazara next on the 28th. So I believe that's next Wednesday.
Oh, that's coming up.
Yeah, and 1 o'clock. And so when that's done, I'll kind of post a notice out to let folks know where we stand and what they're looking to do. It might be as simple as making him understand the way the law exists today satisfies what they want. But then again, if he's feeling that kind of pressure, I don't think he's the only one. Mark mentioned he's hearing it too. I think there's other things we could fix. PHMSA would like us to fix our exemption for the state and clarify that that's just for maintenance activities without naming an entity. So that's another little, line item to check off the box on some cleanup. But mostly be thinking about ways that we can change language that, as George said, kind of loosens our hands. I wouldn't say loosens the laws, but allows a little more flexibility in the creation of tickets and that kind of thing. I think that's the area that we could provide some workload management opportunities. And maybe with the update issue too, the concept of a limited number of updates is another good one. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got about a minute left here. I do have a hard stop at 1, so that works out pretty good. So yeah, thank you all for joining us here. Great conversation, and we've been on here for a while. So if you would just kind of take a moment, reassess your area before you take off to your next task, and if you were driving, please jump out and as you're stopped, jump out and and make sure nothing is coming in front of you or anything before you take off there. All right. Well, thank you all again, and we'll see you soon.
See you around the bend.
Thanks, Dan.